What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. I think a couple weeks ago, I promised you guys we were going to do multiple NBA podcasts before getting into March Madness next week. But if you have been listening to this podcast for the last couple of years, you know that I often lie about the schedule. So, what we're actually going to do today is talk NFL free agency. Matt and I looked at what's going on in the NBA and then all the things that have happened in the NFL since the legal tampering period opened on Monday at noon. So just about 3 days ago. And just decided it's been so crazy that we have to take some time to talk about it. But the thing I did not lie about is that we are going to start our March Madness coverage next week. So the brackets will be released on Sunday night. And our friends from Certified Beef, Brandon and Jack, are going to come on the podcast next week to help us break that down, talk about who the players to watch are, favorite upsets in the first round. If you guys have listened to this podcast for the last couple of years, you know how March Madness goes here. Super fun podcast. We're really looking forward to that and looking forward to talking to our friends from Certified Beef next week. But for now, Matt and I are going to break down the first couple of days of NFL free agency and the new league year for the NFL because it has been wild the last couple of days. So let's go get Matt and let's go. All right, we are back. We got Matt, who is unfortunately under the weather. I feel like
It's my turn now.
Yeah, I feel like every third podcast we do, I come on here and I'm like, guys, I'm sick. My kid got sick. He got me sick again. But you have not seen my kid recently and you're sick. So it must truly be going around.
That you know of.
Ominous. So I told everybody during the intro that I lied about the schedule again, as I often do for this podcast, and that with everything that's gone on in the NFL the last not even 72 hours, it's been 2.5 days or whatever since the legal tampering period opened. Which is like the dumbest thing in the world. Why don't you just start free agency on Monday?
Yeah, because was it Jonathan Grenard? It was someone that it was insanely close to the window opening. It was reported that they had agreed to a deal.
It was DeAndre Swift.
It
was like 12:01 on Monday. DeAndre Swift signed with the Bears for $8 million a year. And that's one of those things like we see in NBA free agency every year where it's like just hats off to the team and the agent for sitting down at noon and hammering that deal out by noon 01.
Yeah.
It's fucking peak efficiency there. Obviously no conversations before the legal tampering period because nobody would tamper during the illegal tampering period. You just wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Which hey, good for DeAndre. He needs to get his money because after that deal was up, he's not getting money again because he's a running back. But I am perfectly fine with him going to Chicago because the only time he played through injuries was during his contract year. So
yeah, it's hilarious for two reasons to me. The first is because with everything that Chicago still needs, obviously their priority was to get DeAndre Swift in the building for a lot of money for a running back to be on his third deal, second deal now.
Well, it's a second deal, third team.
Yeah, third team, second deal. But so you're getting a running back on a second deal, and typically the running backs on the second deal is where we see them decline. But that was their priority in the legal tampering period, or even before that was to be oh, how do we get another running back in the building when they already have last year they had Herbert and Foreman on the roster already.
Well, they have Roshan, who looked good. Who looked good. They just refused to play.
I know. And the plan seems to be that they're going to draft Caleb Williams. And they're like, you know what we really need for Caleb Williams is another fucking running back when you just lost like your number 2 wide receiver in Darnell Mooney, and you have to worry about like who he's going to throw to. But they're like, if we have 4 running backs on the roster, so questionable expenditure to give him $8 million a year, and then also maybe focus on like the offensive linemen that are out there. Maybe like another wide receiver for Caleb. It is a confusing process
No,
by the
man,
Bears.
let Poles cook.
You seen that meme where it's like let Poles cook and the person's like eating ramen out of a toilet?
Yep. Yeah.
That's the Chicago Bears experience. The thing about the Bears too that's so funny is that they could be really good this year. Think about like how many games they won last year, like 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
And the defense was like really nasty after they got sweat over there.
Mm-hmm.
And think about like if Caleb Williams is really the guy that a lot of people think he's gonna be, that's a massive upgrade over Justin Fields. I don't know who Justin Williams is. It's a massive upgrade over Justin Fields. So if like you get him another weapon, you build that offensive lineup a little bit, like you could have a good defense. You can make a wild card push next year. And instead, they're like, where we're going to spend our money, running back.
I think it just shows me that the front office of this organization right now, they're just not it. Right? They don't get it. And yes, so like they got hot and won a bunch of games at the end of last season, but like I don't really expect them to exceed that win total next year because that is like the biggest that biggest jump to make is like going from like that 7-8 win team to actually like winning more than half of your games.
The funny thing about the running backs, though, is that like the Bears were not the only team that thought this way, where they're like,
No.
we need to make a running back move immediately. Because like the first day of free agency or the first day of the legal tampering period or whatever, I think like 9 running backs signed. And there was like multiple other running back transactions with running backs being traded and like I saw a list of like the top 20 running back free agents.
Mm-hmm.
And they included guys like Mixon on there who weren't really free agents, but like
Yeah.
out of the top 20 available running backs, I think like 11 of them, like 11 of the
Yeah.
top 13 had already moved in the first 48 hours of free agency. I'm like, what is going on? The Bears signed DeAndre Swift. The Eagles' big move so far is paying like what, $13 million a year for Saquon Barkley,
Yeah.
which is another team that the Eagles are like, oh, look at all these problems we had last year. And look at how our defense totally took a shit and became the worst defense in the league over the last
Yep.
7 weeks of the season. And they're like, you know what we're going to do to fix that? Spend 13 million fucking dollars on a running back.
Yeah.
That'll help our situation. But
Yeah.
they do that. Green Bay goes out and signs Josh Jacobs, and they're like, Aaron Jones has been the motor and like the heart and soul of this offense for the last 5 years. Let's fucking cut his ass and go get Josh Jacobs and let AJ Dillon walk. Like what? I don't understand what these teams are doing. The Dallas lets Tony Pollard walk because obviously he was the problem
Mm-hmm.
last season and not Mike McCarthy. So the Titans, who don't need a running back really, go out and sign Tony Pollard and let Derrick Henry go. The Ravens let multiple key defensive pieces go to other teams in their division, with Geno Stone, the safety, going to the Bengals and Patrick Queen going to the Steelers, which
Yeah.
is going to be one of my favorite storylines for next year. And they're like, you know what we're going to do with these key defensive pieces walking? We're also going to sign a running back, Derrick Henry, who like 2 years ago, this would have been super exciting, but
Yeah.
so it's just weird to see a lot of teams, and like a lot of teams we consider smart teams like the Ravens, focus on signing running backs first thing, while other teams are out like making big splashes.
For years, the NFL has been like, we don't value running backs at all. Like they're trash. We don't care. Then the Lions spend money on a running back in free agency and draft one in the first round, high in the first round. and have a really good year. And now all these teams are like, oh shit, we need to spend money on running backs.
I think it's a combination. It's a combination of a couple things. Like one, I do think watching the Lions offense be powered by that run game is part of it. I think
Hmm.
you could probably give credit to Christian McCaffrey and what he was able to do with the San
Yep,
Francisco offense,
for sure.
where people are looking at that and being like, damn, how do we get our version of
Which
that?
is which is the wrong takeaway.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. We talk about this every year is that this is a copycat league.
Yeah.
And teams always like it's a matter of having the right takeaway versus the wrong takeaway. And the wrong takeaway from watching the Lions in San Francisco in the NFC Championship last year was spend money on a running back.
Yeah.
The right one was, hey, if we really build out all pieces of our roster, we could have a really good team, even if we don't have a super elite quarterback
Yeah.
under center. And they're just like, Eagles are like watching that game and they're like, how do we beat the 49ers again? Let's get Saquon Barkley and we'll just like kind of figure this thing out when their defense was absolute garbage at the end of last season.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, though, that's interesting is that the running backs have kind of like the market's kind of settled.
Yeah.
You know, I think they've all kind of realized that nobody's getting like that Todd Gurley deal or like,
Mm-mm.
the deal Le'Veon Bell was looking for that he held out a
Yeah.
year for. And like, even though Saquon got really good money, 38 million for 3 years, like a lot of these guys just kind of took smaller deals instead of holding out and waiting for like massive money from
Yeah.
these teams. Although, God, the Packers paid Josh Jacobs 48 million for 4 years.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people are just like, you know what we need is fucking running backs. Tony Pollard got 24 for 3, which is good, not great. But like that's the kind of thing I'm talking about is like, when Ezekiel Elliott was like holding out with the Cowboys, he was
Hmm.
looking for a massive deal.
Yeah.
And they're just not getting those anymore. And I think they've just kind
Nope.
of accepted their place in the league.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you finally hit free agency, your options are essentially settle or don't get paid at all, right? Like if no one's giving you the 15 million a year, then you're gonna take what you can get because 12 million is still 12 million better than nothing.
Can I read you something alarming?
You're gonna anyways.
The Rams paid Todd Gurley $22 million in 2018.
Yep.
This is why running backs don't get big money anymore. See,
Hmm.
when Todd Gurley was good though, he was worth it. Like when
Yeah.
he was Todd Gurley, but he went downhill so fast with the knee issues and
Yeah.
stuff that like
His knee just died immediately after that deal.
yeah, and well, that's what happens to a lot of running backs on their second
Hmm.
contract is not the knee necessarily dying, but like you lose
Yeah.
it around age 26, 27 as a running back.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see like how all these guys do in their new homes. Um,
Hmm.
Aaron Jones goes from Green Bay to Minnesota, which
Yeah.
this was another like one of my favorite parts of free agency. The first couple of days is like how many dudes left a team and went to a division rival immediately.
Yeah.
So like Aaron Jones gets cut by the Packers and
Hmm.
goes to the Vikings. Saquon Barkley goes from the Giants to the Eagles. I mentioned Patrick Queen, linebacker from the Ravens,
Yep.
who left in free agency and went to the Steelers, which is I can't wait for them to play
Yeah.
next season. Jordan Poyer, the All Pro safety from the Bills, they had to cut him, and he goes to the Dolphins,
Yeah.
which like we kind of talked about this at the end of the season when the Bills were eliminated by the Chiefs. Is that like this was their year because
Hmm.
they were going to have to make major cuts, and we saw
Yeah.
that with like Poyer and Mitch Morse and a couple other guys
Yeah.
leaving. But so I think that's like
Yeah.
a really funny kind of storyline for next year is to watch all of these guys who went to a division rival, and we're going to have a lot
Hmm.
of like revenge games, like the Saquon Barkley revenge game against the New York
Yeah.
Giants.
Well, aside from the running back fiasco that we saw too, though, a really interesting thing that I saw is like this is not a particularly good safety draft, but holy shit, prior to the start of the league year, did a lot of teams cut high profile safeties. Like there's never been a better time to sign a safety if you need it. I,
Yeah,
I I think the timing on that is very interesting.
it seems like there's like a shift going on
Hmm.
in the NFL right now with positional importance because
Yeah.
like the safeties are definitely one thing. Another thing I was reading about today actually is that teams seem to not care about the edge rushing specialist as much right now. Like
Hmm.
the guy who, is like a third down
Yeah.
weapon and that's it. Like can't stop the run. Um, and a good illustration was like the Eagles are trying to trade Hassan Reddick right now,
Yeah.
and absolutely nobody even gave them an offer. The Patriots brought back Josh Uche on like a really small 1 year deal.
Hmm.
He's the type of guy that like I feel like someone would give way too much money for in the past. Where I'd be like you'd be reading it and be like, Josh Uche got how much money
Yeah.
for what? And then it's like, oh, he gets, his sack percentage is high, like even though the total sacks isn't high, and it's like, oh, he's that proverbial specialist you bring on. So like you're seeing it
Yeah.
in safeties where it's like, okay, if you're not a safety who can kind of do everything, like play in the box, cover tight ends, cover deep,
Yeah.
these teams are like cutting those type of guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I think what we're seeing is that if you are truly only useful in the passing game, like you're only useful on third down, right? Because what you saw with a lot of these teams that went deep in the playoffs is that if they know they can run on you, they're just gonna keep doing it. And
Unless you're the Ravens,
yeah.
which I'm still not over it. How do you run the ball six fucking times against the Chiefs? Never gonna get over it.
It don't make no sense
I
at
can't.
all.
I can't move on. I still can't move on. It's been how long? Like a month, 2 months, 3 months?
An eternity.
It feels like it's been an eternity, but I think about it every day. I'm like, that was the first thing I text you too when the
Yeah.
Ravens signed Derrick Henry. I'm like, oh, that's nice. He's gonna have fun watching Lamar Jackson throw 47 passes against the Chiefs in the playoffs next year.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
does seem like there's more of an importance on the ground game again,
Hmm.
which is funny because football is very cyclical. And
Oh
for
yeah.
anybody that's interested in that, there's a really good book called Blood, Sweat, and Chalk that illustrates like the history of how offense changes and defense has to catch up to offense because it's reactionary by nature.
Yeah.
And about like, oh, so the offense was running like the wing T and the defense had to stop that. And then when they started stopping that, the offense had to change and like evolve into something else. And it goes through all the evolutions the offense did and how the defense caught up. And it seems like the evolution the offense is going through now is like we have to have a more balanced attack and not throw 50 times a game,
Yeah.
because we went through like the spread era where you would have like four receivers who would all get, 75 targets in a season. And then we went through the era where it's like, okay, why are we throwing the ball to our third and fourth receiver so much when we could just throw it to the one and two receivers even more?
Hmm.
Then you saw like specific guys get like a shitload of targets. Now teams are kind of learning how to stop that or like do better against those number one receivers.
Yeah.
So it's
Make
like,
it
okay, how do we
less
beat that?
efficient, right?
Yeah. Not that you're ever going to really do phenomenal against number one receivers, but
No, but like if you can make it so that that means that they're scoring 17 points a game instead of 28, yeah, you win.
yeah. Well, we kind of talked about that in the playoffs too, because you look at the final four and it's like, yeah, so the Lions have Amon-Ra St. Brown,
Mm-hmm.
right? But he was like the only guy out of those final four teams that you would really call like a true number one receiver,
Yeah.
right? Like the 49ers have Ayuk and
And
Debo.
and even him, like he breaks the mold of what a true number one is
Mm-hmm.
looks like. So
It's different. But like, the Ravens' best receiver was Zay Flowers. And then the Chiefs,
mhm.
we talked about their issues ad nauseum this season in the receiving game,
Yeah.
none of which mattered. But
Nope.
so it's an interesting shift, and like you're seeing all these teams spend a shitload of money on running backs. You're seeing guys who can't play in the run game get cut, whether they're safeties, linebackers, edge rushers, like and you're seeing dudes who are super versatile get paid a ton of money. Like Chris Jones got a new big deal from the Chiefs
Hmm.
because he's an extremely valuable piece of that defense as an
Yeah.
interior disruptor who can play against the run and the pass.
It is funny every offseason now to just watch the mental gymnastics that so many GMs jump through to justify not having Patrick Mahomes. Like that's all this comes down to is like I don't have Patrick Mahomes. How do I make it work?
I know we were talking about what podcast we should do this week. I was like, I think we should do an NFL free agency podcast. And Matt's like, none of it matters. That none of these teams got Patrick Mahomes. So they just spend your money however you want. You still don't have Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. Like how many times do we have to watch this movie before we learn the lesson?
I was thinking about this, and I wanted to talk about the other big news from this week, and that was Kirk Cousins signing with the Atlanta Falcons
Yeah.
for $180 million with like 100 million guaranteed or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Some insane number, which like shout out to Kirk Cousins and his agent. He's made like more guaranteed money than any quarterback we've ever seen, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, like the vast majority of his contracts in the NFL have been guaranteed. And he has like what, one playoff win?
One playoff win. But like
Yeah.
he's such a weird player because
Mm-hmm.
I did my quarterback list after the Super Bowl, and I was like, God, I have Kirk Cousins like somewhere between 10 and 12 as like one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
probably right.
landed with him at 10, but he's also the only good quarterback that we've seen hit free agency like almost in our lifetimes. I know Peyton went
Yeah.
to Denver after the neck injury, but like how it's not even like the great quarterbacks. It's like
Yeah.
almost every quarterback does not change teams if they're good enough to be a starter.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Kirk Cousins
Yeah.
has hit free agency twice.
Well, and it's like it's one of those things where even a good quarterback has such value in the NFL that you would rather trade them than let them hit free agency because of the value that you will get back for that.
Yeah, I think Stafford is a prime example of that. Is like even as an older quarterback,
Yeah.
they traded him for 2 first and a second
Hmm.
and a third or whatever it was. So,
I mean, Deshaun.
yep,
I
the
mean, that
Watson
was,
trade, Russell Wilson
yeah.
trade, like there's a ton of
Yeah.
value in trading guys that are even have
Yeah.
any semblance of being good.
Yeah. I mean, Deshaun's not good now, but
Yeah, but I mean, at the time, him and Russ,
yeah.
it's funny because now that Russell Wilson has been cut by the Broncos and they decided to eat the $84 million cap hit, I look at that trade and I'm like, God, is that the worst trade in NFL history? And the answer is
Oh,
no, because the Deshaun Watson trade happened like 2 days apart from that trade. That literally probably the two of the worst trades in NFL history happened within 2 days of each other.
are those the two worst trades in any sport ever?
I want to say yes, but I don't know if I'm being super reactionary. Like I'd really have to think about all of the other sports. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't. Kobe Bryant got traded for Vlade Divac, when he was 18 years old. That's pretty bad. Like the Hornets could have had Kobe Bryant for his entire
Okay, it
career.
is. It is. However, it's not like Vlade Divac showed up and wasn't capable of playing basketball.
Yeah, but it was Kobe Bryant.
Yeah,
One of the all-time greats.
Makes it really bad. One of the worst. Not, hey, yeah, we're gonna trade for you. And you know what? A year later, 2 years later, we're actually willing to take on 84 million in debt cap because you're so bad.
I go back and forth on what is worse between the Russell Wilson trade and the Deshaun Watson trade because I'm like, yeah, the Broncos wanted to get out of that so bad they're willing to
Mhm.
pay $84 million.
Is
But
that not the biggest insult that we've ever seen in sports?
yeah, they cut Justin Simmons to do it too,
Yeah.
who is still, I think, still floating out there as a free agent, which
Yeah.
kind of highlights your safety point from earlier. But like, yeah, I mean, I know the owners are like really cash rich and they can do stuff like that, but just to be willing to pay $84 million to get rid of you has to
Yeah.
be the biggest FU in sports
Right.
history. But
And
like,
like even for these people, like $84 million isn't something that they're just like, yeah, I'll just burn that.
yeah. But then I look at the Deshaun Watson trade and I'm like, you knew that he sexually assaulted 26 or more women and you still made the trade and you traded like 3 firsts and then gave him one of the biggest contracts in NFL history and he can't play either.
Yeah.
Like you're kind of in the same situation, except you're supposed to be good if you're Cleveland. Like they made the playoffs last year with Joe Flacco. And so you got to look at it and be like, God, if Cleveland, if Deshaun Watson was actually like the same Deshaun Watson he used to be with the Texans, it might have been a good trade because they might have been a Super Bowl contender, except for the fact that they don't have Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
But
That
like
minor detail.
he's so bad, and you just willingly like took on this known rapist and
Yeah.
gave him a ton of money. So like you willingly took on all the bad PR because you're like he's gonna be good, and then he sucked.
Yeah.
So that's tough. But going back to the Kirk Cousins thing, I texted you this earlier this week, but I was like, man, the quarterbacks in this league are just playing a completely different sport than everybody else. Like you look at all the money that was given out to other people,
Yep.
and then you look at the fact that Kirk Cousins is 36 years old, coming off a torn Achilles that he suffered during the season.
Yeah.
So we don't even know 100% that he's going to be ready for the season. I mean, he probably will with all the advances in like torn Achilles things
Yeah.
that we've had, but he's 36 coming off a torn Achilles, and they're like, here's $180 million with like more than half of it guaranteed. Come to Atlanta. Um, and like going way, way back to the original point of like teams that don't have Patrick Mahomes are like kind of doing all these things.
Yeah.
I don't think that every team's goal is to win the Super Bowl. I think like, the Falcons specifically, they've had the corpse of Matt Ryan. They've had Desmond Ritter, Taylor
Well,
Heineke.
let's be
Like
honest. Their goal is to be relevant.
that's exactly. So like they've had all these awful quarterbacks. And last year, I went on this whole tangent before the season of like this Atlanta team has everything they need to win the division and win double-digit games against a soft schedule. But the quarterback play was so bad.
So bad.
So bad. So like to go from what they had to Kirk Cousins, who is still probably like a top 15 quarterback at the worst,
Mhm.
you got to think that they're going to be relevant enough to win that division next season.
Yeah.
Like it's got to be between them and the Bucks, right?
Yeah. I mean, as long as his arm doesn't fall off a cliff, they'll immediately be I feel like the best team in the division.
They should have been the best team in the division last year, but the
Yes.
quarterback play was so damn bad.
Yeah. Because like he hasn't played in such a long time now that it can be easy to forget. But like when Kurt he when Kirk heats up, he's really fucking good. Like, he's an absolute microwave of a player. But when he gets hot, you don't stop it. It just doesn't happen.
I saw a video on TikTok. I can't remember the creator's name. I feel bad because I want to give him credit, but he was like making a video about the Falcons signing Kirk, and they're like, "All right, Kirk, here we're going to give you $180 million," and he's like, "I'm going to give you above average quarterback stats." And they're like, "That's great. Are we going to win any playoff games?" And he's like, "Absolutely not." And they're like, "But we're paying you $180 million," and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to put up like really above average quarterback stats." And people are going to wonder why we didn't win more games. It made me laugh. But I mean, I don't know. You got to look at the Atlanta offense and think like, okay, the offensive line's really good. You got
Yeah.
Bijan Robinson. You got Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and they just signed somebody, Darnell Mooney, as well. Like you have enough on that offense to be good, right? Be competent
Yep.
with Kirk Cousins. And like, is it enough to win the Super Bowl? No, but you should be relevant. You should have a winning record. You should play a home playoff game next season. And I think for a lot of teams, like that's enough, and you probably look at it and you're like, okay, we should win our division. We're going to get a home playoff game. If things break right for us, maybe we win a couple playoff games, and you never know what could happen if you get a little bit further.
Hmm.
But I don't think Atlanta's like, all right, we got Kirk Cousins. It's Super Bowl or bust now. Like, I think they're
No,
perfectly fine just being relevant.
no. I do think that there's an opportunity here for this to be the Atlanta team that we thought we were getting last year.
Yeah, this is my
I know.
biggest fear is that I
Yeah.
have to be back in on Atlanta after
Yeah.
what happened last season.
I'm not in on them. I'm just saying that there's an opportunity.
The thing
Um,
that makes me more in on them is not that they have Kirk Cousins, but the fact that they do not have Arthur Smith.
yep. Yep. For sure.
Like,
Um,
I'm meh on Raheem Morris. Like, we'll see
yeah.
how that goes, but I like Zach Robinson.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think Zach Robinson kind of looking at his background and what's worked for Kirk in the past, uh like it's a fit. This will be the first time that we've actually had a legitimate chance to evaluate Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson, which is really, really sad when you think about how long Kyle Pitts has been in the NFL.
I have another Kirk Cousins related question for you.
Okay.
How long until he becomes the spokesperson for Chick-fil-A?
2 years.
You think 2 years? I was going to say 2 seconds with like he's a big like Christian Catholic guy, and Chick-fil-A like being one of the sponsors of the Georgia Dome and like having a Chick-fil-A in the Georgia Dome.
Yeah, I think like on a national scale, I think it'll take longer.
Okay. I mean, I'm thinking I'm gonna see him in Chick-fil-A commercials like tomorrow. Like new Falcons quarterback, Kirk Cousins. They should be a fun team. I'm so afraid to be back in on them, but I think you can't undersell the impact of moving on from Arthur Smith and having a new head coach. Not even
Yeah,
going to say a competent head coach because we'll see how he does, but just like not Arthur Smith,
yeah,
which,
yeah. It's the Urban Meyer is out of the building effect.
yeah. Also, coincidentally, if Mike Tomlin wins 9 or more games with Russell Wilson as quarterback and Arthur Smith as OC, I'm just going to say that he's the greatest coach ever. I think he's the greatest fucking coach ever. He's purposely, it's like going into a UFC fight and tying an arm behind your back and and still not dying. It's incredible what they've done. Bringing in Russell Wilson for a year on a league minimum, and then they trade Deontay Johnson away. Fucking phenomenal work by the Steelers.
That's going to be an interesting watch this year. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
I did think it was hilarious that with them signing Russell Wilson, the articles that came out were like he he's coming in to compete with uh Kenny Pickett, and then like another one came out later. It was like, yeah, they like sat down and had a conversation with Kenny Pickett before they signed him. And it's like none of this means anything. They're not starting Kenny Pickett after bringing in Russell Wilson. No chance.
I just think it's funny that they're like, God, we got to do something at quarterback. And then like the first thing they do this offseason is they're like, we're not doing anything at quarterback. We're not bringing in Cousins. We're not bringing in anybody. And then they sign Russell Wilson. And it's like,
Yeah.
ah, I know that you want to instill confidence in the kid, in Kenny Pickett, but this, I don't know, man. It's such a confusing move to me to like, you watched Russell Wilson last year
Right.
and you're like, that's our guy. That's our guy. We don't need to go after Kirk Cousins.
Well, and it's like, what, you think bringing in the guy that burned every single bridge in Denver is going to build confidence in him?
Like everybody in Seattle hates him and everybody in Denver hates him.
Yeah.
And you're like, it might work for us though. Bring him in. I'm sure George Pickens will be completely fine with him at quarterback. Speaking of confusing moves, the last segment we were going to do is like favorite moves and then like biggest head scratchers. Do you want to, which one do you want to do first? I feel like we're already on like the head scratching moves. So we could stay there if we want. I have a bunch. I think I have more. I think I have more head scratchers than I have moves that I actually liked.
Yeah, no, there's been a ton of head scratching moves.
So one big one for me was basically everything that the Vikings did. So you lose Kirk Cousins. You have no quarterback. And I mean, they signed Sam Darnold, which is like, are we, your offense is like really set. You have TJ Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and you just lose Kirk.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the conversations were like behind the scenes. It kind of seemed like Kirk had already worked out the deal with the Falcons and was like, that's where I'm going. But then like the Vikings go out and spend a ton of money. They bring in Jonathan Greenard on a 4-year deal for $76 million. They go and spend money on a running back, bringing in Aaron Jones. Like, I felt like they were making moves like a team who had a quarterback. And then they come out today and they're like, we are absolutely 100% not trading Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
When like, best case scenario for you, you're drafting a rookie quarterback and trying to develop him. And it's probably not like one of the big 3 to 4 guys in this draft. Yeah. Worst case scenario, you're starting, some combination of like Nick Mullins and Sam Darnold next season. And you went out and spent all this money on like defense and like shoring up the offense and all that stuff. And I feel like, I'll let you go next, but like another head scratcher for me was the Carolina Panthers trading away Brian Burns for a 2nd and a 5th.
Yeah.
When the rumor is like 2 years ago, they had an offer from the Rams that was multiple 1st-round picks for Brian Burns. And I feel like nobody has learned a lesson from that of like, hey, if you suck and you're gonna suck, maybe like get the draft capital while it's good. I feel like the Vikings could get a massive haul for Justin Jefferson right now with some of the wide receiver trades we've seen the last couple of years. And they're like, why would we trade him? We're going to be good. You're not going to be good. You don't have a quarterback. So I would probably trade JJ right now, get like a shitload of picks, start like rebuilding, get some ammo to like go and get a good quarterback in the draft. Because I feel like next season, I'm just going to see some combination of like Sam Darnold, Bo Nix, and like maybe Nick Mullins, if he's still there, throwing to Justin Jefferson. And I'm just going to be like, why did you do this? Very confused.
For me, I think easily the most head scratching was Philadelphia spending almost $13 million on per year on a running back. It just it flies in the face of everything that we knew this team needed to focus on. They follow that up with giving another 33 million to CJGJ that they refused to give him a year before, after he basically didn't play all year. Following the logic here for this team is right now is really difficult.
Yeah, not to mention they also just made Jake Elliott either the highest or the second highest paid kicker in the league.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, we brought our kicker back. We spent a ton of money on a running back, and we brought back CJGJ, who we got rid of for $11 million a season. They didn't address any of the issues, the very blatant, glaring issues that we saw at the end of the season last season.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with that one. For a head scratcher, I also have the Patriots, my team. So the Patriots came in with $82 million or $85 million in cap. I think they had the most functional cap space of any team in the league on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And all they've done so far is really just kind of like bring back their own guys. Like they extended on Wenyu on a pretty good deal. They brought back like Anthony Jennings and Josh Uche and like just like some guys they've drafted the last couple of years that have been pretty underwhelming. And like their big thing for the last couple of days, and even like the week prior, was like, hey, the Patriots are going to take a huge swing on Calvin Ridley. Like they're going all in on Calvin Ridley. And for the last couple of days, all I've seen on Reddit and on my timeline and from my Patriot friends is like, where's Calvin Ridley going? Is it Jacksonville? Is it the Patriots? Those are the only two options. And then fucking today, the new league year starts, and it's like he signed a $92 million deal with the Titans. And I'm like, how do we let the Titans do this to us again? Because it happened last year with DeAndre Hopkins, where it was like, oh, it's down to like the Patriots and another team, and the Titans are like, psych, he's ours now too. So I don't know. I just look at it and I'm like, okay, the Patriots have the third pick in the draft. All signs are pointing to them drafting a quarterback. And you're just going to bring a quarterback into a team that has a bottom 5 offensive line and a bottom 5 receiving room. And like, we're just going to ruin another quarterback like we ruined Mac Jones. Like that's how I feel looking at it. And then like, there's all these reports today. So after Ridley signs with the Titans, reports come out and like some people are like, oh, the Patriots are going to look to the draft for wide receiver help. And then other people are like, oh, they're going to look to the trade market and look at like Brandon Ayuk and T. Higgins and all these guys.
Mm-hmm.
But so like you lost out on Ridley, and now we are either going to draft a receiver in like the second round, I'm assuming, or you're going to trade away like a premium pick to get like a T. Higgins or a Brandon Ayuk. I don't like where this is going right now. And it's funny because Robert Kraft before free agency was like, we're going to be burning through money in free agency. And I'm like, okay, we still have $50+ million in cap. And the only person we've signed from outside the organization is like Austin Hooper and Jacoby Brissett. So what the fuck are we doing?
Just absolutely killing it.
Yeah. Also, Calvin Ridley signing with the Titans was kind of a head scratcher. I mean, I guess they're bringing in like weapons for Levis year 2.
Yeah.
But that came out of absolutely nowhere.
The only reason Christian Wilkins to the Raiders was surprising is because I'm dumb and didn't think about them. That is exactly the organization that I expected to just say, here's all of the money because we need the attention.
So I actually have that on my list of moves I liked.
All I will say is, and I don't think he's necessarily Albert Hainsworth, but oh boy, anytime anyone gives an insane amount of money to a interior defensive lineman to change teams, it kind of screams Albert Haynesworth.
That's that's very fair. The reason that I had it on my list of things I liked is that it's a ton of money and I don't like the money, but
Yeah.
I just like the fact that the Raiders have looked at this and said, okay, we don't have Patrick Mahomes. We're not going to win the Super Bowl.
Yep.
We have to play him 2 times a year. And they're like, you know what? We're probably not going to beat him ever, but we're going to find a way to make this as fucking uncomfortable for him as possible. Because
Absolutely.
Christian Wilkins is like dirty and was constantly like stepping on Josh Allen's like legs and balls and all
Hmm.
that stuff. And I don't like
Yeah.
that. I don't like that shit. But I think the idea of adding impact pass rushing interior linemen along with Max Crosby, and then like maybe if Tyree Wilson ever develops, just having like a nasty D line with an attitude that's gonna make it as painful as possible for Patrick Mahomes to beat you twice a year.
Hmm.
I just like like they want to have an identity under Antonio Pierce. And like this is the identity is that the defense is going to be nasty. They're going to beat the shit out of you. And you might beat them, but it's not going to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, at a certain point, you kind of have to take that approach of like, you have this super weapon that nobody else can match. So, like, we just have to build in countermeasures because we can't we can't equip with that same large gun. We just can't.
Yeah, I feel like a team like the Chargers looks at it and they're like, we have Justin Herbert. How do we out chief the Chiefs? Like, how do we beat them with quarterback play? And it's just not going to happen. You're just not going to have the best quarterback in the game when you
Nope.
play them. Even if you have better weapons around him,
Hmm.
it's just not going to work. And so, like, the Raiders look at it and they're like, okay, well, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes versus Aiden O'Connell next season. Aiden O'Connell's not winning that matchup. So, how do we like level the playing field? And it's like, we're just going to beat the shit out of Patrick Mahomes for 3 hours. We're just going to fucking kick his ass. And we might lose, but he's going to feel it tomorrow and he's not going to want to play us when he sees us again. So, and they beat him last season, didn't they?
I think
I
so.
thought the Raiders did beat the Chiefs last
I think
season. I know,
so.
like does Jack Jones had like a pick six or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I like leaning into that identity for them. Will it work with Christian Wilkins? Who knows? But I like the attempt to be like, this is who we are now. Because that was
Yeah.
kind of like the history of the Raiders too, is that they were like a very physical, like we're gonna beat you up type of team when they were in
Well,
Oakland.
and that is a very, very nasty D-line combination with Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby.
Yeah.
Like it still matters who else you put out there, but it doesn't really matter who else you put out there.
If Tyree Wilson can develop, like, oh man. That's a big if, but
Yeah.
he's a big swing potential guy. So the other head scratcher I had was also in the AFC West, and I just mentioned them, but the Chargers, like coming into the last day before the new NFL year, and being like 25 million over the cap.
Yep.
And like the reports are like, all right, we're gonna have to release like either Mike Williams, uh, who plays for them, Joey Bosa,
Yeah.
uh, Khalil Mack, or like Keenan Allen. And it's like you look at every other team in the league, and it's like, oh, Patrick Mahomes restructured his contract and created $22 million of cap space.
Yeah.
The Saints cut Michael Thomas today and went from being like $75 million over the cap to like 15 million under somehow,
Yeah.
which just kind of proves the cap is fake. But
Yeah.
even though,
It's funny because like this isn't even all that hard because to like sell to the players because more often than not it the way it aligns is like, oh yeah, like you're getting more of your money now instead of later.
well, it's just like how can everybody else restructure except for you, and you have to cut like a key piece of your team instead? And they did restructure someone today, but they also cut Mike Williams.
Uh,
And it's like, really, you couldn't find like two guys to restructure that could free up like 25 million in cap or something. I mean,
no,
I'm not a cap expert. I'm not like the salary guy on the team or whatever, but I feel like there had to be an alternative solution to like letting go of Mike Williams and just making your team worse under your like with your first year of like Harbaugh. But
yeah,
I feel like they probably asked Greg Roman, and he's like, "Well, I'm not going to fucking use him this year anyway. Might as well get rid of him.
he's not a running back.
Cut his ass." Yeah, that was the other thing too. Is like they let Austin Eckler go. And
Mhm.
they bring in Gus Edwards, and they're like, "Yeah, now we're really gonna run the ball." Okay, have
Now
fun.
we're cooking with gas.
The Chargers are always going to charge. It doesn't. We don't even have to be playing football.
Yeah,
They're just going to fucking
they
do it.
they are, I think, easily the worst run franchise in the entire NFL.
I after some of the moves I've seen, I question like the Steelers and the Eagles and like some of
Yeah,
those other teams. But
but they were already under the cap.
yeah, but this is the whole thing though. Is like the Chargers just got a new GM. You bring in a
Hmm.
new coach, and it's like, oh, it's all exciting. We got Harbaugh, and they're like,
Hmm.
the first thing he does is like, I'm bringing in Greg Roman. It's like, okay, so we're charging again
Yeah,
already, and then everybody else is able to
which
free up space, and you have to cut Mike Williams.
like again, I want to point out the fact that Harbaugh immediately brings in Roman. Like he's telling you why JJ McCarthy didn't throw the ball more. Like he's telling you why.
It's just so funny because like the first thing they did is come in and they're like, just this Justin Herbert guy's really good, and everybody's like, yeah, and they're like, imagine him with a run game. Like, I don't want to take the ball out of Justin Herbert's hand. What are you talking about? Like, and Austin Eckler has been like a really good running back for them. I have fucking no idea what these guys are talking about. Um, you want to do signings that we liked real quick before we sign off?
Yeah. Um,
None.
yeah.
They're all
None of
bad.
them all at
They
all.
all sucked.
I really like Aziz Al-Shaair going to Houston back with D'Amico Ryans. I think that's going to be work out really, really nicely for them.
Houston also got Daniil Hunter,
Yeah,
which is
but
like that's
he's
good.
pushing 30 and making like what, 25 mil a year.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
Houston was just like, we have a really good rookie quarterback. Let's go spend all of our money. And they like got Hunter and they get
Yep.
Aziz Al Shair. They trade for
Yeah.
Joe Mixon. Like,
Hmm. Yeah. I mean they pushed all their chips in. They they very much did the thing where like, all right, we have to spend all the money now. See, I mean, Houston definitely had an interesting uh start to the free agency period. I really like the Lions bringing in Amik Robertson, uh, just because he's a guy who consistently is like where the ball is, makes plays on the ball. Um, he's scrappy as hell, like he fits. Um, and we need bodies at corner. You
yeah.
just,
You also got Carlton Davis in another
yep,
corner too.
yeah,
Find someone else. The I liked the Giants getting Brian Burns for like 25 cents on the dollar.
yeah,
And just the Giants confuse me because I don't think they're going to be good as long as they have Danny Dimes, and they like let Saquon walk, and then they bring in I think they signed like Devin Singletary
mm-hmm,
to be their new running back. But I kind of talked about the Raiders like leaning into having an identity, and now you're going to have Kevon Thibodeau across from Brian Burns
yep,
for a while, but then like you also let Xavier McKinney go and sign with the Packers. Like, so I'm a little confused there, but I just like the, oh hey, we can get like a really good player cheap. Like go
Yeah.
make that move. Like I would have been happy if the Patriots made that move. The Raiders
Um,
Raiders also signed Gardner Minshew, which is like they cut Jimmy Garoppolo to bring in Gardner Minshew to I'm assuming he's going to back up Aiden O'Connell.
yeah. The Cardinals picked up Sean Murphy Bunting, which I think is while like they're I still don't think they're going to be good this year. I think that's going to be a pickup that's very much worth their while. Uh, he's a really good player.
The Panthers gave two guards $153 million combined.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, their
do I
offensive line was trash.
Yeah, I do like that the Panthers are like doing things to help Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Like they don't have their first round pick this year, which is number
Yeah.
one overall, which is pretty fucking brutal. But they're trying to improve the offensive line. They got Deontay Johnson from the Steelers. Like they're trying to do things to help, but then they also traded away Brian Burns, who's like one of their best players. Jeremy Chin left and went to the Commanders on a super cheap deal, which was a little confusing to me. Um, but like overall, I would give the Panthers a positive grade for at least getting some offensive line help in there.
Yeah, for sure. A move that has not happened, don't know if it's going to happen, but DJ Reader is in Detroit or will be soon making a visit. That is a move that I will absolutely love if it happens. Uh I mean,
That's like your wet dream. You've loved DJ Reader for a
I
long
I've
time.
been on DJ Reader for a long time because like he's such a good nose tackle in terms of like shutting down the run pretty much all by himself in the middle of the defensive line. But then when you drop back and pass, he's still pressing the pocket. He's certainly not going to be Chris Jones. Uh, but he is going to get pressure and he's going to make it easier on guys like Aiden Hutchinson. So uh like that would be the ideal scenario. So
Yeah, the move that I need my team to make is to improve this wide receiving core. Before, I mean, there was a very bleak uh post on Reddit of like what the Patriots starting offense is going to look like, and it's like quarterback Daniels or May, running backs Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson, who they
mhm.
signed, wide receivers question mark, and then like the guys they have in there
Yeah.
left tackle question mark. So like there's a lot of question marks on this team. And like I said earlier, I'm very nervous that we're just going to draft another quarterback and then ruin him by murdering him this season,
Yeah.
which maybe that's what Jacoby Brissett is for, for $8 million this year is like, okay, don't kill the new kid. So
Yeah, you draft McCarthy
uh,
and then you
it's,
let Brissett play for a year, right?
it's my fault. When they draft McCarthy, I want everybody to know it's my fault. Like I did this. The Patriots are going to we're going to go to the draft and someone from the Patriots is going to come and stab me in the stomach and be like, Adam Fowler sends his regards. And I'm going to be like, that was me. I fucking memed the JJ
I
McCarthy
am
thing.
me.
I memed it into existence. And now what we're seeing is that he's the third quarterback on people's boards. Even though I was telling my dad this the other day because he wants to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. And I
Mhm.
was like, the quarterback prospects who make me the most nervous is like the further away we get from having actually played football, the more they go up people's list. And like, I think you could say that about Daniels and JJ McCarthy.
Mhm.
But like,
Well, I will say the one thing about McCarthy is that if you didn't see him being kind of like in this like upper third of the draft during the season, then you weren't really thinking about, okay, what are teams going to want out of a quarterback? Because every tool, physical tool they want, like that, JJ McCarthy has it. It's just you haven't seen him throw enough on tape.
yeah, it's like, this is my whole thing with JJ McCarthy, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah.
I'm not even here saying like, oh, he's going to be bad.
Yeah.
He's going to be a bust. I think like, we talk about like the variance band stuff
Hmm.
every year. And I just think that he has like the widest range of outcomes out of these like top guys like Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
And I just think like drafting him at 3 is so incredibly risky
Oh yeah.
because he only throws like 200 passes a season. And if you look at like, I don't know, we've had this whole debate is like they didn't win in spite of him, but like they how many quarterbacks could you have plugged in there and they still win the national championship? It's probably higher at Michigan than it is at any other school
Oh
based
yeah.
on like how much they run and stuff like that. And it's like, do they not trust
Hmm.
him? Do they just not need to? Like,
Yeah.
I don't. You watch some
And
of his.
again, Harbaugh answered that. Jim Harbaugh absolutely answered that by hiring Greg Roman.
When Justin Herbert only throws 200 passes this season, we will know that it was not his. It was not JJ's fault. But like, it's just he's a hard prospect to evaluate
Yeah,
because of like the lack of tape
for sure.
and just like the lack of opportunities. And it's like you watch that Penn State game and it's like he threw 7 passes against
Yeah.
Penn State. So
Yeah. Well, and I think that was the game he got hurt in, right?
no, he played the whole game, I think.
Oh, I know. He was playing hurt for like weeks. He didn't get healthy until like the playoffs started.
Yeah. But then like you
Or no,
also
right
watch
before the national champ. Yeah, something like that.
yeah, you watch like the tape from the Alabama game and there's that one play where like they ran the double pass or whatever and he like jumps up and does a 360 and catches it and then has DJ Dallas like right in his face and whips it off his back
Yeah.
foot like 50 yards downfield for a completion and it's like
Yeah.
okay, yeah, none of the other guys in this class can make that play.
Yeah.
But like also I watched him throw like a 5 yard slant at 150 miles an hour. And I'm like, okay, I just don't know what to think with JJ McCarthy. And I'm just gonna like we're gonna be at the draft. And I know that if we draft him 3rd, that the camera is gonna be on me on ESPN, and I'm just gonna be like, I don't know. I'm wearing like my Patriot shirt. I'm like, I don't know how to feel. No idea what the fuck's going on.
Absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely.
I'll be happier if we draft like Marvin Harrison Jr. or like Drake May. That'll be happy Adam meme on ESPN. I'll be like, yeah. And if we draft JJ McCarthy, I'll be like, yeah. And if we draft like Joe Alt, I'll just start chugging a beer. It's like so. But that is it for
yeah.
us. As always, Fouled Up can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Twitter at Fouled Out Sports. You can find Matt on Twitter at Matador_defense. Whether you want to or not is up to you. You can hit us up on Gmail, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. And you can find our videos on TikTok, Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It is a long name, but you can't miss it. This Sunday is Selection Sunday for March Madness. So we'll be back next week. We're going to be joined by our friends from Certified Beef in order to break down the brackets for you guys. Every year we do who are your favorite player to watch, what's your favorite upset, who's the Final Four, and then who's your championship pick. So we'll be making those picks with Brandon and Jack next week. And then I think after that, bringing Clint back to break down some college basketball for the next couple of weeks. So I tend to lie about the schedule sometimes, like when we want to do an NFL free agency episode off the cuff.
Woo!
Not lying though. I think the next 3 podcasts are going to be March Madness. And then in the month of April, Matt and I are going to be jumping into the NFL draft. So I think 4 or 5 NFL draft podcasts, including the recap that'll come out in May. So looking forward to that. We're going to do the My Guys. We're going to do we'll have a mock draft in there, and then like biggest questions of draft season, maybe some gambling advice, and then our draft recap. Did I miss anything? That's a lot of stuff.
No, I think you got it all.
Okay. Patriots, go get a wide receiver. I can't live another season of like, yeah, we got Juju Smith-Schuster and what's his face, Kendrick Bourne, and all these guys out there. We need we need a real receiver. Like, I like Kendrick Bourne. I like Pop Douglas. I like Kayshon Boutte. I don't like any of those guys as my number one. Go fucking
Nope.
do it so that JJ McCarthy has someone to throw to next season.
Exactly.
It's
You got to
very
make
important.
JJ work.
So, all right, we'll be back next week with March Madness. Until then, Matt, my friend, I will see you later.
Yep. Bye, guys.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye,
Bye,
Robin.
Mom.